conflict, that's when everything went crazy, and that's when everybody started choosing up. And the more they choosed up, the more they started going their own ways, they fractured the core of the empire, and so the empire reconsolidated itself as a military based organization. This is the Moorish, so-called Turkish Ottoman Empire. This is when this shit started popping off. But it goes back way further than we even think. Okay? Way further. And so these Moors reconsolidated themselves, and they said, we're going to go against Rome. And from that point on, it was on between the Moors and the Romans. Right? So much so that it got to certain points in history in which Moors actually took control of Rome, took control of the seat of power. The Turkish Sultanate was called the Sultanate of Rome. You understand? That was the name of the Turkish Empire, the Sultanate of Rome. What's his name? King George was referred to as the Sultan of Rome in Palestine, because they at certain points they had to consolidate how the whole shit went, because it was too much infighting, too many people on too many different sides. And these niggas keep the old bullshit going. The Rulership that was shut down by Amenhotep the first and the second. This was the first wave of this stuff. Then they got shut down, then reconsolidated themselves as Hebrews. Then them Hebrews went crazy, and then they wound up having to go in, and they was killing everybody, all the Canaanites and all of that shit. Then they had to get taken over, and that's when they got took over, because they went against their God. This is the problem. You become the fool for the man becomes the fool for the divinity he worships. They become their God, and then that's what happened. Right? So we can follow this story all along, and so it just keeps getting worse. This is from the Clock of Destiny, by the way. So in this Clock of Destiny, he refers to these people as the Union Society of States of the KKK Magna Carta. Okay, that's what they're called, which is true. Okay, here we go. Yes. So he calls them that. The Union Society of States of the KKK Magna Carta, right? Now, going back to that Supreme Court thing, the Supreme Court in 1930 wound up catching them, trying to convert everything. Get the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Get the book, Secrets of the Temple. Get the book, The Unauthorized Biography of the Rothschilds. Get these books and read what they was doing. Because these was light-skinned, melanated people who was now divesting themselves and decoying themselves, following the old so-called Roman tradition of subterfuge by creating vassal states, right? Vessel states that they could use and puppet and rule through. So they took it from actually being huge tracts of land and turning that into a person. And this is why Caesar now became the personification of this movement. So the insignia with the United States dime 1865 represents the Roman axe, the fascia, the fascists, the United White Order, which unfortunately left the Moorish or Asiatic descendants on the outside looking in. Universally during the past 93 years of Roman economic, social, and commercial strife, Father Abraham, the God of the Roman Union, involving the North and the South Pole from July 4th to January 1st. That's the linking, meaning this is what links them together. You understand? Abraham, Father Abraham, had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. Abraham is the founder, is the unofficial founder of Rome, because he's the one. Them 12 sons that he had to, each one had to go to a different district. And in each one of those districts, by the time of Yaqub now, these were the districts that each one of those dudes was in. So each one created his own gang type, right? And then each one of them, now when they decided they were going to come together, they came together under the banner, the Hebrew or the Hebrew. And then as a political force, caused so much problems in Egypt, they had to go. Once they got kicked out of Egypt, they started to invade the Canaanitic lands, the Moorish lands of those Canaanites. So much so that the wars and shit was so frequent that they said, look, we got to bounce. So that's when in the Circle 7, they went to the Egyptians, they cousins, and said, look, these was your peoples. So based on what you did with them, we need more land from you, because you owe us for the land that your peoples came, your slave came and took from us. And that's how we got everything else. But again, this is only after generations upon generations of Reconstruction after the Younger Dryas. So now this is when everything starts falling apart. The banner of the Star and Crescent, or the flag with the moon and the five-pointed star in the center, insignia of the Asiatic Moorish nation. It is the mother of all national banners in the world today. The Moorish flag, namely the Star and Crescent, represents the entire human family, some 2,100,000,060,000,000, upon this ball of mud termed Earth. It gave birth to the banner of the Iron Cross legions, or the German tribes of South America. See, that's why the Germans was with us. Right? Because they all have national affiliation to the old ancient Mauritanian or old Moorish Empire, the E pluribus unum, prior to the Roman tribes' invasions. That's what they were called by 1930, right? So CMA calls them this in 1946. In 1930, Supreme Court lists them as a group called the Union of the United States. The Union of the United States was all of the people who were down with the Roman legions, the Iron Cross legions, who were reconsolidating themselves as powerful duchies throughout the Moorish territories, and then forcing people through conversion, murder, or genocide to be a part or put them under that. So in that, the Turks, the Moorish Turks, we put so much pressure on these niggas, right? That we still, because remember, we still heated from losing in the Council of Nicaea. The Arians, i.e. the sons of Arius, i.e. the Moors, the Arian Afris Empire, who were against all of the shit that they was doing at the Council of Nicaea, forever waged war against them. And that's why that would basically started the war against the pagan Christians, right? Because they were pagans who were fronting themselves to be Christians, right? Who didn't understand divinity or any of that shit. That's why all of the original churches that Peter wrote to was in Asia. They were not in Europe. They were not in America. They were not in Africa. They were not anywhere but Asia. And all of them 7 churches that they talked about, that Peter wrote to, that came about after the millennial reign started, all of them is destroyed now. None of them exist now, because millennial reign and all that shit already happened. So none of them exist now. So ask yourself, if that's the case, then how if all of the churches that Peter and them niggas was doing was in Asia, how is everybody in Europe a Christian today? See? I'll tell you, because none of them niggas is real Christians, because Christianity means lack of substance. Christ means the divine nature of man. Put them together, it's a fallacy, it's fake, because Christianity was not existed. It was a false time pincer that they could use to graft everybody and lock them into the false timeline that was created through the Intergravicissimus in 1581. I-581. Okay? So during all of that, going up to the Supreme Court now, going back to now the War of 1812, the War of I-8112. That war, that invasion, is when all of the groups of them got together under the new Iron Cross banner, which was Rome, right? But then they're calling themselves the 6 European nations. But under them 6 European nations that helped invade, they all received their letters of marque from from the Duchy of Angiers, right? Because after the marriage of Louise and Anna Maria that led to the creation of Louisiana, all of those Franconian territories over there and all of the Washita territories over here got annexed together, got wed together. And thus, the ancient draconian ways that was passed down from them being Hereshefs to Hebrews to all of that shit was all being passed down through the ignoble line of these so-called Europeans who were, again, what we would today consider occultists or Satanists. And so after the Duchy of Angiers, Louisiana, as well as Angiers over there in Lorraine and them, was established during the investiture, the ceremony Emperor Sigismund, right, who was the German, and Richard de Vere, Earl of Oxford, the brutish, the French brutish dude, were all brought into the Knights of the Garter at St. George Chapel at Windsor under King Henry. Richard, who was a Dey and a Vere, he received his investiture into the Societas Draconis, which was the Order of the Dragon, either Order of the Dragon, the Order of the Red Dragon, or Order of the Green Dragon, but it was called the Dragon Society. These were everybody who were down with the Hereshef, bloodletting, pagan, ancient Nephilitic bloodline, murderers, killers, who had now re-established themselves under the new Holy Roman Empire, right? And now their goal was to take over all of the investitures of these things that was against that and confer them under the new blood rights. And that's where the war between the ancients and the moderns started. Meaning that there was a war between everybody who was following the ancient ways, right? In which the power was coming from within, in which the temple of man is the true seat and throne of God. All that within shit that we was doing was now being invested outside of us. And now these people outside of us, they want, so you are the temple of Solomon, your body. These niggas took your story, created a story around it, built an actual building and said, no, this is the temple. And all of y'all got to come in so that way we can feed off of all of y'all energy. You see? And this became, again, known as the ancient war between the ancients and the moderns. So anybody seen practicing any ancient ways or anything that was outside of the new bloodletting shit that these niggas was doing was automatically fooled. And this war went on and it morphed into different wars, but it's the same war. Us against them. So Empress Sigismund, founding membership of Society of Cronus in I-388 Vojvode in Mercia, which is now the Midwest United States, is part of the Midwest United States. The old father to Vlad Dracul, because remember, Transylvania is in North Carolina. Look it up. Vlad Dracul was married to Princess Marie Anjou, right? Of Ptolemy, which is the Mauritanian Empire, which is everything west of the Nueces and the Bravo River in America. Luxembourg, get the exotic map of the United States and look where Luxembourg is. It's exactly where Allegheny and all of that stuff is in Illinois, who is related to Empress Sigismund of Luxembourg. The Imperial Royal Dragon Court is the ancient household court and order of the senior of the Angevin descendants of the Imperial Royal House of the Vere of Caledonia, Anjou, and Lorraine. So remember, I kept telling you the three gods, the three things they do. So Caledonia, Anjou, and Lorraine might as well be Anu, Enlil, and Enki. It might as well be Semiramis, Nimrod, and what's his name? You see what I'm saying? Boom. And the physical embodiment of the sovereign princedom of Drakenberg, which is recognized under European law as a sovereign ethnic racial group, the principal nation state of the draconian peoples. Hear what I'm saying. I'm saying everybody, look, furthermore, the royal ambassador on nature and title of the Prince of Drakenberg, the Principus Draconis, is recognized under the official observations of the Department of Internal Affairs of the government of its state within the origin of the European Union. So the Imperial Royal Dragon Court or Order of Prince Nicholas Verdun Dragonberg, these are the niggas that's paying for all of the bloodletting, the pedophiles, the communing with the dead spirits, all of this stuff. And then when niggas get caught doing this stuff, the reason why they don't go to jail is because they can trace themselves back to this. So this is a part of their religion. As being Romans, they are protected under the Societas Draconis, which allows them to eat babies and do all of the bullshit they doing. Those members of the Societas Draconis who are a part of the European Union are also the financial backers who are a part of the Union of the United States. The Union of the United States, as spoken of in the Supreme Court ruling in 1930, is the basis of the people you refer to today as the deep state. So who are they? They are the old Persian, Roman, Catholic, Muslim bloodlines. So that's the Farnese and the papal bloodlines and all of them niggas, the Italians, right? The old Persian, Roman, Italian Catholics, Venetians, that's them. So that's all of them today. Then over them you got the original reptilian black nobility niggas. These are the black reptilians. These are the ones that's bloodletting, eating people, and all of that. These are the dirty Moors who gave up their crowns to the white decoys and acted as butlers to them and went out there and helped murder their own people so that way they can get more money and more white bitches and pass the real gene on to everybody. That's these niggas. That's the black nobility. Then under them you got the Chabad Jews. These are the Hasidims, the Khazarian, all of them type of niggas, the Nazis. Under them, you got the other Jews who are the private bankers. These are the cartels. Whenever they use the term cartel, stop thinking Mexican and start thinking bankers. Then under them, you got the corporations, right? Who basically are funding all of the stuff for them to do. Who are the hundreds, who we are the bailiffs of, meaning that we are technically the CEOs. Moors are the CEOs of every CEO of every 100 company that was created out of the British East India Company, which came out of the Morocco Company, which came out of the Basor Trust, right? Then under them, you got the intelligence agencies, and then under them, you got the Freemasons, who are basically the 5 to 10%. So this means 5 to 10% of Freemasons is actually part of that. And of that, I would say maybe 2.5%. Because they just use the majority of them the way that they use everybody else as food to pay for what the upper peoples is doing. This in part is from whence claim to the real blue blood comes from. Do take note that the word claim as the term blue blood is associated with the blue coat of arms in the halls of records throughout Europe, where it clearly illustrates that the Moors ruled Scotland and France. And in fact, the quilt on the Scottish and British skirts, the tartan, comes from the same coat of arms. Also, this is one of the reasons why the Europeans call the Briton, right, called Europeans Brits or Britain, because Brit derives from the Moabite and Hebrew word for covenant. So a Brit or British comes from Brunei Brith, which means covenant. So the British people, right, were the people of the covenant. That's why James wrote the Bible for his people, but at the same time he wrote the Bible, he had the Demonology created because he was playing both sides. He's a Christian publicly, but privately he's a part of the Societas Draconis. And one side was trying to move on the other side, right? So this is why they claim to call themselves blue bloods, and the blue coat of arms is from Nigeria for the god Obatala, the Orishi of Nigeria, and the star became the symbol of Israel. Anyway, the Anjou family are those who built the famous Horanda Castle or the older Roman fortifications in 1320. The Roman fortification, right, that they built, the Anjou family built, this is going to bring it full circle, right, is the last wall of the Roman fortification that they bowed to in Jerusalem. The Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, this is the castle for the Roman fortification that they doing the ritual in front of. When you see the Hasis going back and forth in front of the wall like they're about to bash their heads in it, what they're doing is a sexual act. They are having sex. They are having symbolic sex with the Shekinah or the Hakma, who is the wife or the bride of God. And so when they're doing that in front of the wall, they're trying to penetrate her wall. You understand? It's a sex ritual. So that wall has nothing to do with the Temple of Solomon, because the real Temple of Solomon didn't even exist the way that they are telling you it existed. And the place that they say that it exists is not even in that part of Jerusalem. Jews got everybody telling them that they're wailing and they're doing the ritual to this last wall to Solomon's temple, when really it's a wall that was built to their Roman god. Okay? So that's it. So outside of the Union of the United States, of the people I mentioned, in the United States government is the rogue House of Representatives, the rogue U.S. senators, and the rogue congressmen. These are all of the groups that were together, as well as ex-British military Navy officers. They were with the Union of the United States too, also called the Union of the United States and the Union Society of States, the KKK Magna Carta, is basically the same thing. Then these United States represents the three different city-states, which is the Vatican, which represents the religion, DC, which is the military, and London, Downing Street, which is the finance. So all of those guys are the insurgency that have been working since 1812 to basically knock everything out and put everybody in the trick bag. And this same insurgency is the insurgency that has been revealed, like I said, in the Supreme Court document. I'm just bringing you through who and how they developed, right? So the other part of this is that international law, right, or basic human rights is international law. International law is common law in arbitration. Okay? There was a court case that came out maybe 2 years ago that said that if somebody goes into court, or they go into arbitration, the courts cannot override the arbitration. Meaning that if you go into arbitration, the courts don't have nothing to do with it. Courts can't come in, and whatever the arbitrator in that makes, that's it. Right? So that means, again, that international law, when expressed properly, is common law, right? Admiralty law, which is the law of Poseidon, the law of the sea, that the law of the Moors imposed on all of the world, or the Phoenicians imposed on all of the world when they was bringing everything back. It had to be like that for a while. But whenever they came on land, they fell under the jurisdiction of whatever sovereign or whatever was there. It wasn't, you couldn't bring that on land. It wasn't until the British came, and the British started to bring that type of stuff on land, that type of law on land, and that's what turned everybody into slaves. Once the British Empire was usurped and taken over. Together with his wife Phyra, were the unique survivors of some of the greatest catastrophes, and Europa at one time was ravished by Zeus. See, Europa, the goddess, was raped by Zeus. Perhaps the myth concerning Europa hides the history of the conquest of Crete, see, by some mighty prehistoric race. See? The Queen Europa enters later on into the Cretan pantheon, and there are two explanations of the meaning of her name. According to some ancient sources, the word, the daughter of the Red Land, because Europa was a queen from over here, from the red clay lands of Georgia. And thus the translation corresponds to the Greek nickname for Cretans, Phinox, right? Which is Phoenix, which is also the land or the symbol on the Washita flag. But the classical writer Hesychius declares that Europa signifies the land of the sunset, right? Where does the sun set?
The west.
In the west, right? And therefore alludes to the western origin of the Cretan queen, the arrival of the Cretans from the west, and therefore from a certain Atlantic or American country. The American tribes often possess the reddest skin and moreover the eastern shores of America. See? So when I tell you that we went out and we became the gods of all of these different places that our ancestors reestablished after the Younger Dryas, after the great cataclysms, and then continued the great war against the beast, we created that. So at some point, it was decided that Hague was going to be where everybody was going to get their stuff worked out. So that was cool up until the Hague got taken over by these same peoples that I'm telling you about. And so they got shut down. So what has happened in the past 12 years is that all of the so-called deep state stuff that they've been doing with talk conspiracy theories and all of that, CIA, all that stuff not only is real, but now it has come down to the point that it's been codified and now it's been sectioned out and now everybody's about to get prosecuted behind it. Going all the way back to the insurgency of 812 and then even before that to 492, to I-492, right? So again, international law is the human rights, and i.e. common law and arbitration. The only common law international court of arbitration of record today that exists is the one in Guantanamo Bay. So that is called the International Court of Justice. So it's not in Cuba, it's not in the so-called United States. It is in the actual international waters of the imperial dominions. So when people get brought there, that is all under the jurisdiction of the original Marines that were instituted after the Barbary Wars, These Marines these are members or appendages of the Republic. So they have no vested interest in the corporation. The corporation don't have nothing to do with none of these people. Matter of fact, most of the military itself is under the jurisdiction of these people. So the clandestine shit that you see the military is doing, that is only different parts. That's not the actual military. DARPA is not really a part of the military. You understand? DHS is not really a part of the military. These were all things created out of war amendments. The only real aspects of the military is the Navy, the Army, the Marines. You know what I'm saying? The Rangers, Delta. That's it. And the Air Force. Right? That's it. Everything else is a creature created by the Union of the United States to wage war against its insurgency within the actual American government. So it is occupying. So the American government is being occupied by the insurgency called the Union of the United States that kind of began in the War of 1812. But I'll take it back to 492. I'll take it back even further, like we just did earlier, to the Societas Draconis, and even before that. Okay? So these niggas, the ICJ is the only place to actually get real remedy. But to do that, you got to get all of these people wrapped up. So this is why in 814, they went in and tried to burn up all of the records, burn up Alexandria, burn up the Library of Congress, burn up all. This is what they was doing. They're trying to get to the land records. Then they tried to invade Baltimore, but the Moors there shut them down. Get the book, The Barbary Pirates in Baltimore. Get that book. And it basically says that the Moors stopped them stop the redcoats, i.e. the deep state, i.e. the Union of the United States, i.e. the Societas Draconis, stop them from breaking into the basilica and destroying all of the birthright records for the rest of us that's here. All of those birthright records got transferred into the Bureau of Land Management. Those birthright records in the Bureau of Land Management are connected to all of the names in the Doomsday Book that Cromwell took when he took everything in 1066, in I-66. This is why you can find your estate. You can go on to gmiutility.org and type in your birth certificate name and see your estates getting money and people using your estate and money all over the world. This is how they did it. So now the time is to reconsolidate that. So we stopped them from burning up the basilica and taking all of the birthright records, right? And locked them up in Fort McKinley, which is interesting. Remember that. So after they were locked up in Fort McKinley, they disbanded, right? The foreign ones, the brutish ones, and ones from other countries left, and then they left the insurgency here. So then the insurgency went through another phase where it changed itself up again and became known as the federal government. Now the federal government now starts to wage war against Lincoln and the rest of them or whatever, and then that's when Lincoln decides, well, we're going to have to print up our own money to get out of it, because these are all Roman-backed niggas that are part of the Union Society of States. And so that's when he set up the greenback. That's when he put everything under martial law. That's when he set up the executive orders. That's when he had to start looking at powers that the United States so-called president may not have even had the right to have. But he had to do something because this conglomeration was taking over the country. And right when they won, they popped this nigga in the head. They used one of their operatives, an actor named Booth, who was a Scottish Rite, right? Whose father was one of the insurgents that was locked up in Fort McKinley. See what I'm saying? Used Booth, popped him. Then once they got him out, Hamlin moved up. Hamlin wasn't with it, what they was doing. So then they had to disgrace and get Hamlin out of there. And then it wasn't until after Jackson they was able to come in and then set up everything.